And welcome back, students. As we continue to delve into interclasses, today we will discuss that of public interclasses. So, with public interclasses, if an interclass is marked with the public modifier instead of the private modifier, as we've seen previously, then it can be used in all the same ways that we've discussed so far, but it can also be used outside of the outer class. The way that you create an object of the inner class outside the outer class is a bit different for static and non-static interclasses. Let's consider the case of a non-static interclass first. So when you're creating an object of a non-static interclass, you need to keep in mind that every object of the non-static interclass is associated with some object of the outer class. So to put it in another way, to create an object of the inner class, you have to start with an object of the outer class. So if you think about it, this has to be true because an object of the inner class may invoke a method of the outer class or reference an instance variable of the outer class, and you cannot have one instance variable of the outer class unless you have an object of the outer class. So for example, you can change the class money from private to public, such that the class definition begins public class bank account, public class money. Then you can use a object of the static inner class money outside the class bank account as illustrated with the following. Bank account equals new bank account dot money, amount equals account dot new money, then you give it a value of 41.99, system dot out dot println amount dot get amount, and of course the code will produce the output of 41.99. You'll note that the object amount of the inner class money is created with starting an object account, in this case, of the outer bank class account as follows. Bank account dot money amount equals account dot new money 41.99. Right, so it's not just saying like money amount, you're not just saying like bank account amount, it's bank account dot money. Right, so that's very important to note that you have to use the dot here to note that this class exists within it. You also notice that the syntax of the second line is not new account dot money 41.99, it's account dot new money. All right. So it's very important that you put that piece there first, the new modifier comes afterwards. Within the definition of the inner class money, an object of the inner class can invoke a method of the outer class. However, this is not true outside of the inner class. Outside the inner class, an object of the inner class can only invoke methods of the inner class. So we could not have continued with the previous sample code, which is outside the class bank account, and so outside the inner class money with the following. System amount.println amount.getBalance. It's illegal. GetBalance doesn't exist within the inner class. So the meaning of amount.getBalance is clear. We know what it's supposed to do, but it's still not really allowed. If you want something equivalent to amount.getBalance, you should use the corresponding object of the class bank account. In this case, you'd have to use account.getBalance. Recall that the account is the bank account object used to create the inner class object amount. All right, so that's pretty much how we handle things with a non-static. But let's see how things are changed slightly when we look at that of a static inner class. So we can create objects of a public static inner class and can do so outside the inner class, in fact, even outside the inner class. To do so outside the inner class, the situation is similar, but not exactly the same as how we outlined that for non-static inner classes. So if we look at this following outline, public class, outer class, public static class, inner class, blah, 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 it's not static, static methods. We can therefore create a object of the inner class outside the outer class as in the following example. Outer class.inner class object equals new outer class.inner class. You'll notice automatically you can see there's a few small changes here. You'll notice that the syntax is no longer outer class.new inner class. We don't have to put the other object there anymore. This may seem like an apparent inconsistency with the syntax while creating the object of a non-static class, but it may help to keep in mind that for a static inner class, outer class.inner class is a well-specified class name, and all the information for the object is in that class name. To remember the syntax for a non-static inner class, remember that for that case, the object of the outer class modifies how the new operator works in order to create an object of the inner class. So it's a slight difference in how they work. Now, once you've created an object of the inner class, the object can invoke a non-static method in the usual way. For example, innerObject.nonStatic method. You can also use an object of the inner class to invoke a static method in the same way. For example, innerObject.static method. However, it's more common and clearer to use class names when invoking a static method. So, for example, we would say outerClass.innerClass.static method. All right. So, the reason why we do it that way is just because, again, it's clear, it's a little more concise. It helps us know where exactly that method's coming from. It helps us recognize that, hey, this is an inner class, so we will oftentimes put the outer class name on there. Now, here's a quick tip when you're referring to a method of the outer class. As we've already noted, if a method is invoked in an inner class and the inner class has no such method, then it's assumed to be an invocation of the method by that name in the outer class. So, for example, we could add a method called showBalance to the inner class money as outlined in what follows. Public class bank account, private class money, private long dollars, private cents, public void showBalance, system out of print line, get balance. And then we have a public string get balance, which simply just would display that out. So the invocation of get balance, if you notice, is within the definition of the inner class money. But the inner class money has no method named get balance. So it's presumed that the method get balance has to be in the outer class bank account. But let's just suppose for a moment that inner class did have a method named get balance. Then this invocation of get balance would be an invocation of the method get balance defined within the inner class. So it's always going to look on that inner class first before it goes and checks that of the outer class. Now, if both the inner and outer classes have a method named get balance, then you can specify what you mean the method of the outer class. So, for example, as follows: public void show balance is now print line bank account dot this dot get balance. Now, the syntax outer class name dot this dot method name always refers to a method of the outer class. Right? So, if in the rare occasion you had a method that was shared between both your inner and outer class and they do something different, you can use this approach to help specify which method exactly are you trying to call. In the example that we just shown, bank account.this means the this of bank account as opposed to the this of the inner class money. So we're going to use the bank account version of the method that we're using here rather than using the money version of it. So if show balance existed in, let's say, both bank account and existed in both money, then we would, in this case, because we have bank account.this, it would be using the method that's defined in bank account over the method in money. Now, if we didn't use that in there, but it still had it in both, it would be using the one in money. All right, and that's going to wrap up today's notes, folks. Kind of another quick one here. So we will see you next time.